Hello and welcome to the debate in a brand new and shiny refurbished Trafford Suite here at Old Trafford. Absolutely delighted that we've got a right old cast with us. Danny Webber and Siobhan Chamberlain, ex-Manchester United players. Samuel Luckhurst is with us as well, and James Ducker, two our esteemed journalists. Shall we start with Spurs? Manchester United looking so good for the opening half an hour, and then things went slightly skew-whiff, didn't they, in the second half? Samuel, what did you make of the game?
I thought United, for majority of the first half, edged it. They had great chances, but a little bit like last season, goals are still hard to come by. And where Rasmus Højlund is still unavailable, you look at the team, it is pretty glaring that there's not a goal scorer or a striker, an out-and-out striker starting. I was slightly surprised that Ten Hag went with the same side, but that said, United started really well. There was an improved performance from the Wolves game. But there was just that flurry of yellow cards. I think it was Wan-Bissaka, Ramsey, and then Bruno Fernandes. I mean, Bruno Fernandes' booking seemed pretty harsh, given that he was just speaking to the referee who didn't want to talk to him. But after that seemed to be a bit of a momentum shift for Tottenham. Tottenham had a couple of chances. They were able to maintain that energy into the second half, and where they got that goal, although United had some pretty good chances after it, it seemed like Spurs' approach play was a lot smoother, and United, where the atmosphere was up at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium under a new manager, they just couldn't quite claw it back from there.
James, it was progress, I think, from the Wolves game here at Old Trafford. Just need to take another step, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would take much to progress from the Wolves game. That was desperately poor. I thought it was a really entertaining first half, as Samuel alluded to. But it was a very, very flat second, and I thought they were pretty disappointing. I thought they were quite disjointed in midfield. Just made it too easy for Tottenham. And I mean, I was surprised, like Samuel says, that they kept the same team. I know there's the absence of Højlund, but the best attacker, Marcus Rashford, is at most at home on the left, and I think he's most effective there, and you certainly saw that last season. And I think definitely like to see against Forest that he's put back into his preferred position, and they rethink potentially what they're doing at centre forward. They tried Jadon Sancho as a false nine during pre-season. He actually did fairly well there, and I think he's one of the players when he's come on has actually looked fairly bright. So I think there needs to be a little bit of reconfiguration. Obviously, Mason Mount is out injured now till the international break, so there's going to be a bit of a change in midfield.
We'll talk about the reshuffle in midfield when we preview the Forest game in a few minutes' time. The game itself, I don't know, that opening half an hour, the distances that we saw in the Wolves game between Casemiro and Mason Mount had obviously reduced drastically. They decided to push Casemiro a little bit further upfield to reduce that sort of distance. And I thought it was working, the turnovers from Mount on the edge of the penalty area, Casemiro being able to sort of quarterback some of the crosses going into the box. Really, really good from Manchester United, but weren't able to sort of keep that going.
I think we came out with real high energy and we pressed really well, which we didn't do against Wolves. And the transition was good. We created chances, but it boils down to putting your chances away. I think that's the key to it. And we had some really good opportunities. You think in the first few minutes, Anthony's put one over the bar. Obviously, you go back to Marcus's header, which potentially could have been offside, but then you've got Bruno's header. Garnacho was coming forward with opportunities. They're big chances when you're going away from home that you've got to be putting away. And I just think that we're not fluid enough at the top end of the pitch at this moment in time, and it's giving us headaches when further back, because Tottenham were looking for us. They were looking to try and play. We stifled them for the first half an hour, and at which point they gain confidence. The more we don't put the ball in the back of the net, they gain confidence. And going in at half time 0-0, Postecoglou would have probably said to them, well, come on, try and get yourself an early goal. And that changed the whole dynamic. So it's about putting the ball in the back of the net, whichever way you look at it, and we're just not quite there at the moment.
I know that it's very easy as Manchester United fans to turn around and say it's a Stonewall penalty and it should be given, and if that goes in, then it changes the game. But it's a Stonewall penalty, it should have been given, and if that goes in, it would have changed the game.
There's so many moments that you could have said changed the game. Like Danny just spoke about it then, being clinical. I think it's hard to kind of get your heart set on it should have been this, it should have been that, just for one moment. A game's played over 90 minutes. There were enough opportunities there for Manchester United to score that goal. And football's a game based on momentum. When you've got momentum, you need to be clinical, you need to be ruthless, and you need to score those goals. And Manchester United didn't do that. Tottenham did. When they got the momentum, we said, like, after those 3 yellow cards, that gave them that momentum. They went on from there and scored. That's the delicate balance of football, and Manchester United have got to get better at managing that momentum, and when they're on top, scoring those goals.
Bruno's headed miss. I'm sure that if he was sitting here with us, he would turn around and say, oh, I've got to be doing better with those. But those are the fine margins, aren't they?
They are, and you saw the disappointment in his face as soon as he's done it, because he's got it that wrong for him as well. I would have, as soon as I saw it was coming to him, I thought goal, because technically he's brilliant, and he normally does get in those positions and finishes dinners, you know. So at that point he didn't. So, yeah, you know, they are key moments, as Siobhan quite rightly said. In another game, we score 3 or 4 of them and we're comfortable, but it's just not falling to us at this moment in time. You look at the Anthony one in the second half with the post. You know, when you see it from behind, there's acres for him to aim at, and he's gone just outside the post and hit it flush. That we don't then equalise, which gives them the incentive to go and score again. So the key moments that are not going in our favour, but the only way to do it is to get your heads down, work together as a team, and go back to last season's sort of mentality of celebrating every block, celebrating, and creating that camaraderie again, and be horrible to play against.
I'm glad we've got a goalkeeper with us, because I thought Andre Onana was standout for Manchester United. Not only what we know he's really good at, which is that distribution, but also sort of highlighting his shot-stopping ability as well. And I think coming into our Manchester United side, where he's going to play such a big part, it's quite nice to see some positive signs nice and early.
Yeah, definitely. And as a goalkeeper, that's your number one role, isn't it? Make saves, stop goals. So the rest of it is kind of a bonus. And coming into the team, being a completely different goalkeeper to David De Gea puts different pressures on you, because you're coming in, like we go back to the Wolves game where he came for that one near the end. He might not have normally come for that, but he probably had in his head, I've been brought in to come out and to claim and to command. So that puts a different pressure on your decision making to say, I've got to come for this, even if I potentially don't think I should. So the more he settles, the better he's going to be. The players around him will start to understand what he's going to come for, because as a defender, you'll know you've got to like shield the ball and protect your goalkeeper if you know they're coming for it. But at the moment, these defenders don't have that bond with him to know exactly what he's coming for, when he's coming for it. But that will develop over time. And as you said, the positive signs are there so far. Making saves, coming and claiming, the distribution, that ping that he had out to the other side. But that's another side of it as well. He can make those passes, but those players in that front 3, front 4 aren't used to receiving those balls. So it's their switching mentality of saying, I need to be ready for every single moment in this pitch during the game to receive these balls. So there's changes throughout the team, just affected by that one different player.
Do you sense, Siobhan, look, it's 2 games, it's very early. Do you sense slightly greater ease, though, among the defenders when they see Andre in possession? Do you think that they think there's a confidence in a greater security there?
They probably know that they're going to get different distribution from it, because when you saw David on it, you probably thought it's going to go to the centre-backs. So it changes your mentality of where your positioning is higher up on the pitch. Whereas now I think they get it, and every single player now needs to be aware. This ball could come to me. If I'm in a slight bit of space, it's going to come to me, and it's going to come to me with quality. And I think that changes the dynamic of your back line, of your midfield, and also your front line as well, knowing that you're going to receive a ball played directly into you with quality, and who's there reading to bounce off that as well.
He uses both feet as well. I mean, maybe not long range, but he's prepared to use both feet, which I think is quite interesting.
He's really comfortable. Yeah,
it just opens up the pitch completely, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you look in, there was times where Richarlison was pressing, and he just played a simple one and get it back again. And Richarlison, after about 15-20 minutes, just stopped going. He didn't fully want to go in, because he knows that he's comfortable enough to play it around him, and then it opens up, as you say, for the long range one. Marcus, Garnacho, Anthony have got to be turning their body with the intent of going in behind, because he's got the range, he's got the quality, and it also pushes their defenders back.
I've got to say, the 60-yard diagonal is Paul Scholes-esque, isn't it? Like into stride of Alejandro Garnacho. It's ridiculous.
We had a great view of that from the press box. We're almost adjacent with him, and it felt like if you went to a golf major and you seeing the drive and you see where it's going and you're just admiring it and you know it's going to hit the pin, and it in his case it did. It went exactly to the right man that he was aiming for in Garnacho, and that's going to be key going forward with his passing. Like, pressing is such a huge part of football now, and it has been for a long time, but his passing can take out players from the opposition side, as Danny just said. With Richarlison, he was beating him quite easily, and obviously that frees up room for another player, another teammate, to advance, accelerate attacks. So far so good for Onana. I think he had the incident at the end of the Wolves game where he was maybe fortunate that a penalty wasn't given, but as a shot stopper and with his distribution, I think United have got an upgrade.
Just finally, on the Spurs game, before we move on to talk about the Women's World Cup final and the Nottingham Forest game, Marcus Rashford, I think it's fair to say, we've not necessarily got the best out of him at centre forward in either the Wolves game or the Spurs game. We know that Marcus would prefer to play off the left-hand side. He said that a number of times. What's the solution? Is it to just cut your losses and say, yeah, look, we'll play Marcus off the left, we'll use Alejandro Garnacho as an impact substitute, and we'll play somebody else through the middle? What would you do, Danny?
I think so. I think he's obviously filling in because we don't have Højlund available. We don't have a wealth of strikers available. Anthony Martial's not quite hit the fitness level, so you can't just say, Anthony, you go and play through the middle. So, for me, he's the best player we have on our left-hand side. So he should go in and play on the left-hand side. Jadon Sancho, as you mentioned, remember the Arsenal game in pre-season, he was excellent. He came to feet, held the ball up well, ended up spinning in behind, scoring a really good goal as a centre-forward. I think as an option, that's probably our best option at this moment in time. But Marcus is devastating on the left. You see his body language change when he plays through the middle. And I know as a player, I used to be the opposite. I used to want to play through the middle. If someone put me on the left, I'd be like, and you give it your all, but you don't enjoy it in the same way. And as a creative player and playing with the sort of flair that he plays with, you want to just be out there feeling free and not overthinking where you're playing. Should I come to feet? Should I not? And that's centre forward position's a specialist position where you need to have the movement right.
It's funny because that's what he says when you speak to him about it. Playing off the left, he knows his angles, he knows his runs, he knows where he needs to be at what time. He doesn't. It all becomes very free. He doesn't have to think about it. So I think Danny sort of hit the nail on the head. In a more wider fashion, how much does not having a full-on number 9 hurt Manchester United's attacking options?
I think you just look at the lack of goals so far. The only goal was scored by a centre-back from a right-back's cross. They were very dependent on Rashford last season. He had it was career best season for him playing as a left winger. He did get a few goals playing through the middle, but there'd be in-game changes. There would be method behind that. There was an unpredictability about it. And that's why I thought going into the Tottenham game, Sancho should have come in, because then you can switch. Sancho likes playing on the left, Rashford likes playing on the left. If you're alternating, there's another string to your bow there. And with Garnacho, he's only recently turned 19. He only started, I think, 5 Premier League games last season. He's going to have spells in the team where he's going to be a little erratic. You've seen it with some of the greatest players in recent years. When they were at that age, they weren't consistent every week. And so he is going to have to be taken out of the team at times. And if you've got the seniority, that helps. The trouble United have at the moment is that they've not necessarily got the options there, because Martial, I think his appearance at the weekend was his first in 12 weeks. He didn't have a kick during pre-season. Højlund's come in and is not fit just yet. And also with Højlund, when he does come in, there's enough pressure just leading the line for Manchester United. But if it's a Manchester United team that's struggling for goals and he's the £72 million man who's come in, that's a hell of a lot of pressure for him to shoulder, and he's going to need help from his teammates as well, because he's only 20. So Ten Hag has said it time and again, it's a responsibility of the players to share the goals around. Those players, Fernandes, Rashford, Antony, they're in position to get goals at the weekend, but unfortunately they just didn't have their shooting boots on.
Let's move it on. Women's World Cup final, week past, Sunday gone, and not necessarily the result that we wanted, Siobhan, but I think in terms of what it's done for the appetite for women's football and the fact that they've made a World Cup final for the first time in their history is absolutely incredible, isn't it?
It definitely is. And I remember when We were at the World Cup in 2015 in Canada, and it was the cruelest way to go out of a semi-final with an own goal in added on time at the end of the match. It was heartbreak. And then obviously in 2019 as well, so close to getting to that final. Being able to like finally say we've made it to a World Cup final is huge. Yes, it was a hugely frustrating match. Spain were absolutely brilliant. I don't think anyone can argue with the fact that Spain were the better team on the day. Technically, they're a better team anyway. I thought England might have just had that ability, that nous, that management of game to kind of get it over the line. I thought they definitely had the ability. It just didn't turn out that way on the day. But the way the game has grown, I went out with my 2 little girls to watch it in an outdoor bar with a huge outdoor screen, and it was absolutely packed. It was brilliant to see the way that the nation has kind of taken to these players and to women's football is unbelievable if you just think back a few years.
Just love the fact that the opportunities are going to start being there. You know, when you get to primary school and all of a sudden it's not just the lads that are playing football in the yard before, you know, it'll be like, yeah, you can come and play as well. And I think that's the big cultural change that's going to be great. You watched the final as well, James. It just never really got a foothold in the game, did they?
No, I think Spain were vastly superior to us. I mean, the more I reflect on that, the more strongly I feel that way. Siobhan and I were talking earlier, I was particularly disappointed with the last 30 minutes. I don't think they managed the game well at all, and the amount of times where they gave the ball away cheaply, you know, either with a sort of a very risky crossfield ball, or it goes into the middle and they turn it over very quickly. And you're asking for trouble when you give a team of that quality, who are that good under pressure in possession, the ball back cheaply. And it happened time and again. And then these long periods ended up happening with Spain in possession, managing the game really effectively. I thought they bought fouls really well. They played in the areas they wanted to. I mean, the sort of, there was a real, if you actually looked at, I suppose, that last 20 minutes in particular, there's a lot of injury time. Didn't actually get into the Spain box much. And it's been an amazing period, I think, for women's football in this country, and the strides we are taking are huge. But I thought that showed that there's still a way to go in that game, and I think a lot of the players will probably, when they reflect, be a little bit disappointed that they maybe didn't quite rise to the occasion.
I think one player that won't necessarily be disappointed by her performance was Mary Earps, who I think probably did everything that she physically could have done in that game to try and get the result over the line. She is a huge personality. She's clearly sort of leading the charge at the moment in terms of female goalkeepers playing the women's game. I mean, again, I've got a goalkeeper next to me. Who better to talk to about Mary Earps than you? She has been brilliant for Manchester United and for England.
She has been. She had a fantastic tournament, and there's no debating that she was worthy winner of that Golden Glove. And to see the performance that she put in the final and to not come away with a winner's medal is really hard to take. Yes, you want it's a team game and everyone has to put in that performance, but she was fantastic, saving a penalty in a World Cup final, making big saves in big moments for the team. Distribution was great. The way she commanded it, the way she led from the back, you can't have asked for much more from it, and she'll be hugely disappointed, I'm sure, but as you said, can't ask for much more from herself, and could be really proud of the performance she put in.
You know, brilliant saves from Mary Earps, Golden Glove. Katie Zellum doing the business off the bench for England. It's just been absolutely incredible. Ella Toone scoring. How much confidence will they bring back to the WSL, having made a World Cup final? I know that it will have been disappointing, but once you've had a sleep on it, once you've sort of processed it, you come back knowing that you're the second best team in the world.
Yeah, massive amount of confidence. Obviously, it hurts. I saw Ella Toone put on Instagram, it still hurts, but they can be proud of what they've done. And you can. And what it does for the game, when you're playing at that level, and you're playing at World Cup finals, semis, finals, and winning European tournaments, to come back and help the growth of the game for the younger girls coming through as well is absolutely massive. So you do need that level of experience. So I remember being a young player here, and you're looking up to the older players and what they've achieved and how they achieve it, how they go about their daily standards. And now, you know, they have the idols who they can look at, the young girls, and can look at them and say, okay, well, that's how you do it, and that's what you know, that's how you go about your dailies.
Do you know what I think will be really interesting is when they do come back, because I remember when we came back in 2015, we came back, we had a really short turnaround between then going out and playing in the WSL. And we played in small stadiums. There was no one really coming to watch. And it was just really hard to then lift yourself and be like, I've just come back from winning a bronze medal at a World Cup. And now I'm here and no one's watching. No one is really that interested. It was really hard to get yourself back into it. Whereas these girls hopefully are coming back, playing in big stadiums. Hopefully loads of bums on seats, loads of people going to watch, and that changes that mentality completely. It gets you back into it and gets you fired up to go out there and perform again. If they are coming back playing in smaller stadiums, people aren't really coming to watch, it changes it and it makes it very, very difficult to raise your game.
Beauty is that the Manchester derby, both legs will be at the big stadium. So it will be at the Etihad and it will be here at Old Trafford as well. Keep an eye on the Manchester United website and app for all of the ticket details. We are quickly running out of time and I'm very aware that we've got to talk about Nottingham Forest. So we'll do that. That's the next game for Manchester United at 3 o'clock on a Saturday at Old Trafford. Don't fall over, it's actually happening. We've got a 3 o'clock kick-off here. The question that I'm going to ask all of you is, what would you change? So we'll start with Samuel.
With Mount being out, I think Ericsson has to come in. He was excellent at Forest in April, and this is going to be a game where United will have at least 60% of the ball. I think Arsenal had 79% against Forest in their first game of the season, and so Ericsson is completely suited to that. They've got to be attack-minded, and he's an attacking change. As far as the striker situation goes, I would go with Sancho. It's an imperfect solution because he's not a striker, but I thought he was building gradual momentum playing in that role during pre-season. The people at the club were speaking quite effusively about him, how he would drop off, and he was good holding the ball up, and he, as Danny said, he could do those spin moves, and that led to the goal against Arsenal in New Jersey. So Garnacho would be the logical one to come out, just because you've got to accommodate Rashford on the left. He's their best left winger. He's got to play there. It's a little bit up in the air because of the possibility of him going on loan, but every time I see Facundo Pellistri, I think he looks pretty handy, and he's only had one start for United, but looking at the way things have been going recently and the performance level of certain players, I think he should be coming into the team possibly, but I somehow don't see that necessarily happening.
So Rashford on the left for Samuel. Anything from you, Danny?
No, I'd agree. Sancho and Ericsson coming in. What I think is, if you start making wholesale changes, then you don't allow your players to get into a rhythm, and you don't allow them to amend the mistakes or that they've been making in previous games. So it's not about, for me, wholesale changes. The obvious one is Marcus going back out to the left, Jadon coming in, and then obviously Mason Mount being out, bringing in Christian Eriksen.
Can I be really boring and say exactly the same?
No, that's absolutely fine.
It makes sense. Like,
All that does is it puts pressure on James to say something different. Yeah.
But when you put Marcus Rashford central and then put someone else left, you're kind of moving around too many players. You're making too many compromises and then not getting anybody in their position they really want to play in. You'd rather have him somewhere he wants to play and then someone else centrally that maybe isn't as natural there, but you've still got one of your stars, one of your key players, where he wants to be.
I mean, so never catch on, this sensible square pegs in square holes thing.
I think on Ericsson, I think it's a game, at home, given the opposition, that will suit him. I don't think that's always going to be the case this season. I'll be interested. I think he did really well, particularly in the first half of last season. Then obviously had an injury, found it more difficult. He's obviously been through a lot. I'll be interested to see how his game time is managed and how he is used this season. Just on Sam's point on Pellistri, there's obviously the strong chance he goes out on loan. Given that they really aren't blessed with a lot of options up front, I think they're very, very short in attack. They bought one striker who's unavailable at the moment. I think they needed more, personally. And there is he's played really well, hasn't he, when he's come on? He's looked a confident individual. I'm not saying he's going to end up being a regular starter, but I think he's a useful impact substitute to have. And it would surprise me in a bit, given the circumstances, if he went, particularly as there are some forwards at the moment who look short of confidence, who look a bit undercooked. So that would be an interesting development, but I would agree with you all. I think they are logical changes that probably need to happen.
Right. Final question, because it is a 3 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday. This one really directed at Siobhan and Danny. I guess when you were playing the bulk of your career, the majority of your games were 3 o'clock Saturday afternoon, which meant you had a routine that you stuck to. How much of a difference does it make to players to be playing at 3 o'clock on a Saturday?
It depends, because some of the lads coming through now know no different. You know, they know it at 5 o'clock, at 3 o'clock, a Sunday. You know, they know the variety of it. So I think for the older players, where you did have a routine and you didn't have so many games, you maybe play a Tuesday and a Saturday, sometimes not a Tuesday, but your routine would generally be get up in the morning, have your breakfast, then go for pre-match, a little walk, and then you'd be at the game for 3 o'clock. The routines are different now, and the training patterns are different as well. So some clubs will train at the time of the kick-off. So if it's an evening kick-off, they'll train an evening before. I'm not saying United do that, but you know, it's very different in terms of what used to be come in, go training, finish training and go home, and then just obviously be the same routine. So yeah, they're used to it, the young boys. It would be harder for us oldies to get used to.
What do you think? 3 o'clock on a Saturday, better kick-off time?
Definitely. I think I used to hate late kickoffs, especially if you're kind of playing abroad somewhere and it ends up being 8:45 kick. Oh, I hate it. You've got all day hanging around, sitting around. You end up having breakfast, your lunch, your pre-match. Then you just end up eating all day, and then by the time it comes around to game time, you're like, right, time to go to bed now. So 3 o'clock kickoff is perfect for me.
I think it fits well with fans as well. I think fans love a 3 o'clock on a Saturday kickoff. Absolutely perfect. Get the jobs done that you need to get done in the morning. Walk the dog, sort the kids out, then get to the pub, have a pint, and then come and watch the football. And then the evening is yours once you have escaped Old Trafford. Thank you very much to everybody who's taken part in this episode of The Debate. It's always brilliant to have you all along. So thank you very much, and we will see you next time on The Debate.